maybe that's a path for me. I want to be an astronaut and I can do really cool things. So I said, I'm gonna learn how to be a rocket scientist, and that will be my path to being an astronaut. I'm gonna work on my own rocket. So I took an old flashlight and I put some fins on it and a nose cone on it. I had the body of the flashlight, and I took a baggie and I put gas in it. I thought, well, if I put gas in it and if I control the flow of gas by trying to fashion it, pretty silly. I was like 7 years old or 8 years old, something like that. Didn't manage to get off the ground, but it did create quite a little fire. So I snuffed out the fire, came back and discovered I had nearly burned down half the neighborhood. So here's a kid trying to learn, trying to be a rocket scientist. And all of a sudden I was dubbed a bad kid in the neighborhood because I almost burned the place down.
But it's a good early lesson that failure is going to be a part of the journey, right?
Einstein called creativity intelligence having fun. And it's so true. I mean, think about it. It's playing music is actually a form of mathematics. People don't think about it that way, but if you look at a score, it is mathematically correct in terms of timing, beats and notes and structure and the way it comes together. And it's almost a subliminal use of mathematics when you learn how to play an instrument. And curiosity is that innate thing that we all have as children. I mean, how many kids do you know that don't run around asking why? And they're just curious about everything because their minds are just developing and they just can't get enough. They want to learn more and more and more. It's life. And if we can learn as adults also to keep asking why, there's just so much more richness that we can enjoy. Why just look at art? Why not practice it? And then the next time you go to a museum after you've had a canvas and played around with some paint and mixing colors and having texture and dealing with proportions and scale and all that stuff, the next time you go to a museum, you look at a great masterpiece. It's so much more meaningful when you've actually done it yourself. Change equals opportunity. That is the very acronym CEO. Change equals opportunity. That's the role of a CEO, and you're the best person we know at being able to deal with change, good or bad. It's like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then they said, and you've got this weird sense of confidence that you can do anything. All it is a matter of learning. I can learn to do anything, and then I can go do it and be at least reasonably good at it if I spend enough time learning it. So that's not hard. That's why I have the confidence, because I've figured out that the key to confidence is preparation and learning. And then when we don't understand something, we come to you because you're able to take these complex ideas, put them in such simple terms that you can then communicate it out clearly. And so that clarity, change, confidence, and clarity, the clarity piece is both listening, inbound comprehension. No one thinks about Blockbuster and 7-Eleven as the same thing, except they're two iconic brands, right?
Yeah.
If you think about the nature of Blockbuster's business, it wasn't renting DVDs. That wasn't their business. Their business was convenient access to media entertainment. It's the convenience business, not unlike 7-Eleven. They made the pivot from VHS tapes, which is where the industry started, to DVDs because DVDs were more convenient access to media entertainment. So they made that pivot successfully. The digital transition was coming. Clearly it was coming. I wanted to take the company there. My very first act as CEO was to buy a streaming video company called Blockbuster On Demand. So we had a massive competitive advantage versus Netflix because Netflix had DVDs by mail. At that time, very little else. So we had something called total access, which is any way you want your media entertainment, we have it for you.
Yeah.
Pretty compelling competitive advantage, right? So you say, what happened? Well, we also had $1 billion of debt. That occurred from an IPO, in other words, a public offering that Viacom once owned Blockbuster, and they spun it out and created a new entity, a public company called Blockbuster, put on $1 billion of debt, a third of which was due in 2009. Now, if you remember what happened in 2008, something called Lehman Brothers occurred. Financial market collapsed around Lehman Brothers failure and others. And we had a refinancing that we had to get done. That's what happened to Blockbuster. In spite of popular belief, Blockbuster didn't liquidate. They didn't go away. They still own the brand. You never know. It may come back one day. Fear is the lowest common denominator. It works. It's a motivating tool. There's only two ways to motivate people. You motivate them through hope and through inspiration, or you scare them into action, right? And unfortunately, as humans, we have this portion of our brain called the amygdala that was there as cave people to protect us.
Sure.
And it's that small portion of our brain that triggers emotion and the fight or flight reaction. And that's what kept us from being eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. So it was a good thing. So take that same reaction now, put yourself in a corporate environment. Somebody does something that you think, oh man, I may lose my job. I may fail at this if I try. Or I don't think that's a good idea, but I don't want to tell him because
of that.
Fire me. Right.
Right.
It's the same thing. Now it's not a saber-toothed tiger, but it's a boss. Leadership is about change, constant, inevitable, lifelong change. So there is no one leadership style that will ever be the right style. It's constantly changing as a leader, being able to adapt to different circumstances, different times, different styles, because you have different people with different reactions. And that constant adaptation to change as a leader, I think, is what's critically important. It changes the root of all commerce, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Someone needed something and someone satisfied that need and got paid for that service. Commerce begins, right? It's the heart of all commerce. And then that person got a little bit complacent and somebody else said, hey, I'm going to change things and give you another way to satisfy. And then change occurs, right? Again, and someone profits from it and someone else perhaps doesn't. And so change is at the heart of all commerce. And yet when change occurs, as humans, we naturally resist. We get worried because it creates that fear thing. There's only two responses to change. You can either respond favorably and see it as opportunity, or you can start feeling sorry for yourself, put your head down. It's your response to change that separates winners from losers. There's only so much time in a day, but here's what I try to do to curate that decision process. It's for me all about where am I going to either learn the most or contribute the most. One of those two things. So somebody comes to me with a board seat and maybe a company I know nothing about or an industry I know nothing about. But if it's an opportunity to really learn a lot because there are really good people on that board and it's a dynamic company that I'm going to learn from, learn a whole new industry, I may go do it. Or is it something, man, I can really help these folks get to the next level? And I'd like to use my many, many years of experience to help them because I believe they're on the right track, but I can really contribute to this entity. That's the other criteria that I use. I try to use those two things. And then there's probably a fun factor too. Is this going to be fun?
If you could summarize the advice you would give that 21-year-old version of yourself, knowing everything you know now, what would that be? Yeah,
to use knowledge to eliminate fear.
Wow. Yeah, that's really nice. That's a good, concise way to say it.
It's what it's all about, because fear is such a killer of individuals, of careers, of corporations, of society. And the antidote to fear truly is knowledge.
If you enjoy this podcast, please make sure to subscribe. And to stay updated on everything that the Action Catalyst is up to, make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Action Catalyst Podcast and on Twitter at Catalyst_Action. And thanks for listening.